In the past, when I've taught Math 114, by this point in the semester, I would have given every student feedback in the form of a single midterm exam score. This semester, I got a lot more data than that, right? We've had prep quizzes, we've had weekly quizzes, and so I feel like I have a much better understanding of how much you understand in the course and how you're doing. So let's talk a little bit about how I take that assessment of your performance and turn it into a final term grade. I've got a few principles that are really important to me in terms of grades. The first one is that mistakes happen. In fact, mistakes are necessary for learning. And so I don't want my grading system to punish mistake making. I want it to encourage mistake making and reward what happens when you make a mistake and then correct the mistake, because that's where the learning happens. The second principle is that your grade at the end of the term should be meaningful. It should reflect something about how much you understand, and not merely the relative standing in the class. The third principle is if everybody does well, that's a good thing. So grades should not punish anybody because everybody did well. All right. Let's talk about how I think you're doing, right? There was a meeting between me and the other instructors, and we all agreed, hey, things are going great in terms of your level of understanding. You are, as a whole, demonstrating mastery of this material, and you can see that reflected in your quiz scores and your prep quiz scores. We've really got a lot of good data to support the idea that y'all are getting it. Why? Why is that? Somehow that is probably a little bit different from our past experience as instructors of this material. And I got some guesses about that. Okay, so we're doing a lot of things different this term than we've done in the past. So one is that this is a flipped environment. We're doing flipped learning. And there's a lot of good data that says that flipped learning, generally speaking, improves overall level of understanding of the material. There's another thing we're doing, which is we've taken our assessment scheme from being like 2 midterm exams, each of which is worth a huge percentage of the grade, and we've spread that out, right? So now we have like 12 quizzes instead of having 2 exams. So each of those quizzes, we're assessing something. We're assessing a smaller chunk of material. It's a lower stakes environment, so you don't have to stress out as much as you would, say, for a midterm exam. And it's pretty frequent. So there's really good data that frequent low stakes assessment is a much better way to learn. It really improves student outcomes. The third thing we're doing is every single topic in this class, you get at least 3 different shots at. So when it's introduced, you've got the quiz that week. Then you've got the quiz the next week. And finally, you've got the re-quiz. So each topic, you get the chance to see it, think about it, you make maybe a mistake. The next week when it comes up, you don't make that same mistake again, hopefully. And then when you get the re-quiz, you get to replace the score. So we've got multiple chances. And so it's not really a what you would call a mastery grading model, but it has elements of mastery grading model in it. And so that's something that the literature on university teaching and learning supports the idea that actually helps improve student understanding and the mastery of learning goals. Okay, so all that to say, what should you take away from all of this sort of thinking? First of all, you really need to know that there is no preconceived grade distribution, okay? I've tried to be very clear on this, but let me be just super clear one more time. I do not have any idea in my head about the percentage of A's, B's, and C's in this class. I'm not coming in and imposing some kind of set distribution on it. Okay? I can look at the past and say how things have been in the past, right? Generally speaking, I can just collect data from the past. I can go back and look at past grade distributions and say something like, okay, there's something between 1/4 and 1/2 of the class has gotten an A in the past. That's not a statement about, that's not a hard and fast rule about what's going to happen at the end of this semester. The second takeaway, y'all are doing great. Okay. This is fantastic. I really want you to keep up the good work. It definitely is the case that a huge percentage of the class is basically getting everything right. And that's wonderful, right? You should feel good about that. That should not be a source of anxiety to you. And I want to make sure that the grading scheme does not impose some kind of weird incentive structure that makes you afraid of your classmates doing well. You should be glad that your classmates are doing well. Okay. The third takeaway, the fact that y'all are doing so great is kind of a departure from the past. Okay. And that's wonderful. It's a good thing, right? We're sort of, entering a new era maybe. So because you're doing so great, it totally makes sense that the grade distribution may depart from what the grade distribution has been in the past, right? We're not tied to what we've done in the past. We're doing some different things in terms of the format of the class, in terms of the structure, the assessment structure. These are different. So it makes sense that the numbers we're getting out of that, we have to handle them differently than we have in the past. Okay, fourth maybe takeaway is sort of an asterisk on the second and third takeaways, which is you're doing great, but don't get cocky. Okay, so there is some stuff coming up. The material in the course, does get more interesting, more complicated, and that means harder as we go forward. So it may not be the case that nearly everybody gets nearly everything perfect in, say, the next third of the class, as has been the case so far. But I really wanted to reassure you and to try to allay some anxiety, because I don't want you to be afraid to be in a class full of people who know their stuff, right? To me, that's the best thing to do, right? Is to be in a class where everyone else kind of knows what's going on, gets it in a basic sense, because you can talk to people, right? You want to be surrounded with people who understand what's going on in the world. And so I definitely don't want to let anxiety about grades take that thing that should be a good thing and turn it into something that keeps you up at night.